increase your retention rate by just 5%, you can actually increase your revenue by up to 95%.
An incredible conversation there with Arian. It really opens up a new perspective on customer engagement.
There's only so much you can do if all you're relying on is just digital communications and putting people in front of screens. You're missing out on the whole reason why humans are the way we are and how we're built the way we are.
I loved what he was talking about, the psychology behind why personalized gestures like handwritten notes being sent out to customers can significantly impact customer loyalty.
We can actually craft an experience where we influence how the journey is remembered.
So that's the emotive, the psychological case, the people that want to hear like, okay, what does that mean for LTV? The hard numbers.
So it boosts your revenue, it allows you to charge higher prices, and it keeps people coming back again and again. It's scientifically backed.
Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked podcast. I'm Lewis Smith, the founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording the podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. Keen to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business? My book, The Home Turf Advantage, is your blueprint for launching a profitable online store. Grab your copy at htabook.com today and let's get you started. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast. Today, we are excited to have Arian Radmand on the podcast, who owns IgnitePOST. So IgnitePOST offers a really unique service that harnesses the power of personalization, something that's going to be extremely valuable to everyone listening to this with an e-commerce store. And they use handwritten notes to elevate customer engagement. So really, really interesting. And in this digital world, I think it's something that can offer you a unique advantage. So Arian, it's great to have you on board for you to share your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to dive into it and get into all the goodies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we dive into the specifics of IgnitePOST, your company, could you give us an overview of what prompted you to start the service in the first place? Like, what's your background? How did this all start out?
Yeah, so my background is actually in software engineering. And so prior to this, so IgnitePOST is actually my second company that I founded. But the company that I started before this was a two-sided marketplace called CoachUp that was connecting athletes and private coaches in a bunch of sports all across the nation. I got the first ideas that would eventually become IgnitePOST actually from working at CoachUp. And what I realized is that it was the relationships between the coaches and the athletes that made the most successful kind of pairs and bonds. And so the folks that we saw that performed the best on that platform were the folks that developed that relationship the most. And so what I saw there, combined with some of the marketing, the market trends, really led me to start IgnitePOST. So the trends that I was speaking about and that I saw is really this kind of concept of a lot of digital saturation. There was a couple of like major trends I saw. Number one, everybody was super saturated digitally. Digital ads, push notifications, but all emails, all kinds of things. And I didn't see that trend slowing down. If anything, I thought it was going to get worse as we moved forward. And then to couple that, the other trend I saw was that this concept of people distrusting brands and actually trusting communication from their peers more so than communication from an actual business or brand. And so, that was evident because what's the first thing you do whenever you hear about something new is you go and you ask around, hey, has anyone ever used this? Or you look at reviews, right? So that was holding more weight than communication coming from the actual companies themselves. And I saw those two trends accelerating and not slowing down. And so I said, all right, if I'm trying to project, 10, 20 years down the line, and I think that those two trends are going to accelerate and be worse, what are the tools that brands are going to need to use so that they can basically combat those two things, so that they can cut through all this digital noise and communication? And when they do actually reach their target audience, how can they develop that relationship better so that they can develop a relationship with their customers at scale so that they can turn first-time users into people that come back and purchase again and again. So that was the whole high-level concept behind why I started IgnitePOST. And IgnitePOST is designed to do exactly that. So we are a real pen and ink handwritten note solution that is designed to enable brands to reach their target audience at scale. So we work alongside your existing marketing automation tools, but instead of sending more emails and more digital communication, people get an actual real pen and ink handwritten card that looks like this. That's actually really handwritten, that looks authentic, that develops that relationship more and builds more trust and builds more of that relationship with the brand. So that's kind of the quick overview of my background and why we do what we do and why we specifically chose the solution that we went with.
That's incredible. It's great to see the example card that you shared there. And it's funny, I remember an interview that we had a while back with one of our members at Dropship Unlocked, Jared, and he told me something that he'd done personally, in the old-fashioned manual approach, I guess, where he had written handwritten notes to every customer after they'd purchased and had an influx of nice Trustpilot reviews and things off the back of that. And so I guess what your service offers is that at scale in a really automated, hands-off way, which is incredible if we can do that without having to spend all day with a pen. I know I'd get cramp after writing about 3 or 4 of those notes. So I don't do too much writing by hand these days. So it's really interesting to understand our customers' mindsets, right, when they're purchasing from our e-commerce business. In your experience, why do you think that customer engagement, especially through these like personalized methods like handwritten notes, so that's about as personalized as you can get, right? Why do you think that plays such a pivotal role in today's e-commerce business world?
Yeah, well, I mean, at a core, it's really who we are as a human species, right? If we look at human evolution, we're not really designed to be in front of screens. Like, we're in front of computer screens now, but that's like, a very, very super new advent, right? If we look at humans and how they've evolved over time, humans learn about their environment by interacting with it, by kind of touching, feeling it. In fact, I always like to bring this up, a really cool thing. So a couple of years ago, the Journal of Vision actually did this study, and it was a marketing study where they separated folks into 2 groups of people, and they let one group of people visually see a bunch of advertisements. They couldn't interact with it. They could just visually see it. And then the other group of people, same set of advertisements, but they were able to kind of pick up and interact with the advertisements. They were able to, read it, feel it, touch it, smell it, everything, like really experience it. And what they found is overwhelmingly that second group of people that were able to actually interact with their environment, interact with those advertisements, they understood the advertisements better. So they kind of comprehended better. They remembered it longer, and it lasted, it had a bigger impact on them. Same thing. The only difference was they were actually able to interact with it. So that tells us that who we are innately as human beings, that kind of tactile feedback is hugely important, right? So that's kind of one big piece of it. So understanding the kind of, whole experience and customer engagement, there's only so much you can do if all you're relying on is just digital communications and putting people in front of screens. You're missing out on the whole reason why humans are the way we are and how we're built the way we are. So that's kind of the thing that people always forget, is that, this digital environment that humans have created is super new. Humans have been around for millennia, but it's so foreign for us as creatures to interact digitally like this, on a computer screen. So that's kind of the first thing that I'd say that you really need to remember is just who we are as humans and how we got here. So when we talk about customer engagement and why it's important to have other touch points instead of just, throwing, digital communication at folks, it's important just because that's how we've evolved over time. It's built into our DNA that we understand things better, that we can touch and feel and interact.
That's fascinating. And it really is easy to forget that, right? Where we kind of take for granted when we spend so long with computers these days that this is a really new thing. We did not evolve to end up in this position. And I mean, one of the things that, when there's certain brands that invoke an emotion and they kind of, they pull you in on a deeper rooted sense, maybe not through just the traditional visual sense, but the brand that always springs to mind for me is Abercrombie and Fitch. You walk past their store on the high street and it's like that wafting fragrance. They waft out the AC.
You can smell it.
And it's,
you
there's one
before
near.
you see it.
You do, yeah. I walk around, I'm like, there's one there. I know there's one around somewhere, which is tapping into a deeper level of the brain, I imagine, than the kind of the surface level visual concept that we take in. So that's really interesting. And I love the tactile approach, because as soon as you get something through the post box on your door, and then you see it's handwritten, and I always study it because sometimes the estate agents send out those notes and you're like, is it really handwritten? And you see and you're like, this is real, like a person has done this. And it's fascinating. And I think it makes you pay attention, and you probably wouldn't throw that away, because I'd probably be like, I'm going to show my wife that later, or I'm going to show someone else, because it feels wrong to throw something like that away. So let's talk a little bit about the customer journey, if we can, because from your perspective, like a lot of our members will use Shopify for their hosting of their e-commerce platform, their store. And then they'll often use something like Klaviyo for their automations. Usually it's just emails and texts, but obviously Klaviyo is so much more powerful than that and can do so much more, especially if you incorporate Zapier and things like that as well. What are some key areas that you see businesses like ours often falling short in terms of customer engagement, and how do handwritten notes fit into this customer journey?
Yeah. So by the way, that tech stack is something that we see super common. So our solution is actually built to be dropped in right alongside of their flows and everything that they have set up in Klaviyo. So that's kind of the caveat. We're talking a lot about like the tactile feedback and sending something physical through the mail. But remember, nothing happens in a silo these days, right? It's all about creating an omni-channel experience, because let's face it, people prefer to be communicated with in different ways. So the way our solution is built, it actually works alongside marketing if you have those kind of tools set up in Shopify and Klaviyo. So that's kind of like the one caveat there. But in terms of enhancing the customer journey and kind of where people should be thinking about, I always like to dive into the science and kind of psychology behind it. When you're thinking about crafting a customer journey, those are the things that get you the most bang for the buck. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time working with brands on is something that we call the power of personal, and really humanizing your brand to connect your brand, the people behind your brand, with your customers. And this is scientifically backed, that if you can bring that out, if you can bring the people behind your products out and connect them with your customers, that they do a couple things. It retains them better. So it boosts your revenue. It allows you to charge higher prices, and it keeps people coming back again and again. It's scientifically backed. And that's because the way that we've purchased things over time has changed, right? If you think about it right now, you can go to, Amazon and buy a blender, and it'll show up on your doorstep, and you don't have to talk to anybody at all. That is super different than how things used to work in the past. Way things used to work in the past, let's say you wanted a piece of furniture, you wanted a chair, you'd actually go to the artisan. This is like, a couple hundred years ago. You would go to the artisan and say, hey, I need a chair. And you would actually talk to the person that would build and make you the chair. And that felt good because you had that human to human interaction. So that part has kind of been removed from business. So when we talk about the power of personal, we see a lot of brands, and we kind of push a lot of brands to use these handwritten notes to inject that power of personal and connect the customer with the human side of the brand. And so anywhere that you can do that, anywhere that you can kind of bring that forward, is a super important thing to do. I'm happy to go into like some examples, but we've definitely seen really good results from folks doing that, especially post-purchase. So you mentioned about the user that you had, the person in your community that would send the actual handwritten note after somebody made a purchase. That's a great example. We see that a lot. Setting up a post-purchase flow whenever somebody makes a purchase for the first time, or just an important touch point. That's something that is super important to kind of bring the personal side of your brand or business out. So, and that will not only connect them with the personal side of your business, we've also seen it mitigate negative things from happening. So we've had a lot of examples where the wrong product has been shipped, or there's been, a mess up in terms of, their order and what they received. And I have literal examples of people saying, hey, like, you shipped me the wrong thing, but by the way, I got your thank you note, really appreciate it. Can you just like send me the thing that I actually ordered, and like, I'll keep this, so just like recharge my card. So there are tangible things for sure. Then there's also elements like that are hugely impactful that a lot of times people don't quantify and measure. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. So there's that, which is like the power of personal and bringing that out. And when we talk about the customer journey, the other element in terms of using science and psychology that we also really push brands to think about is what we call peak end theory. So this is just how our brains work, right? We, as humans, our brains are limited. We can't remember everything. So if we think about the context of a customer journey with a brand, we're not going to remember the whole thing. So as humans, what we do is selectively, our minds remember selective points along that journey. And that's what we remember to kind of craft the whole thing and understand it. So knowing that, we can actually craft an experience where we influence how the journey is remembered. And the theory called peak end theory, which again is a actual scientifically backed theory, says that you really remember two things along the course of a journey. You remember the peak moment, so like something that's like very, very intently, powerfully memorable, and then you remember the end of the journey. If you ever go to a concert or like a concert festival, that's why the headliners always come at the end of the festival, because as humans, you remember the last thing. Like that's how they position it, so that you walk away from it being like, oh, that was so awesome. If they put the headliner to start the show or in the middle of the show, you wouldn't remember it as much. So using peak end theory, you can do this in your customer journey. And so we work with brands and we say, let's take a look at your customer journey. What is one particular area that we want to make extremely memorable? And then where is there, the end of the journey? And those are the two areas that we really focus on. And if you do that, that's where you end up seeing the most ROI and the most return. So, it's using a little bit of science and psychology, using our product, but then strategically picking those areas to like really, really focus on.
It's such a good targeted approach, isn't it? Rather than just hoping and sending out notes whenever you think it might be relevant, using hard science-backed theory to say, these are the most impactful moments in that customer's journey. This is where we want to kind of to impact their emotional connection with the brand. And the example you gave about buying chairs, like you say, going back a couple of 100 years, it's like crazy to think that you probably had a chair guy. There was like one chair guy in the village, and they were like, oh, you go to John for chairs, he's the chair guy. And it was like, you go and see him because people buy from people. They trusted him or her to make the chairs. And that was I guess it's the same in a sense. Like even with our company, with Dropship Unlocked, it's like the people listening to this, are effectively like the podcast episodes that James and I tell. There's a connection happening there that probably isn't happening if you're just reading the information on like Wikipedia or, going through a textbook reading it. It's that personal connection that kind of draws people in. And then I think if you receive or certainly if I received a handwritten note after purchasing something, even if, like you say, it was the wrong product that got delivered or there was a mistake or something, or even if the product never showed up, I couldn't be angry at the company, because I'd be like, but they took the time to write this note, so I'm not going to dive online and leave them a bad review or anything. I'm going to probably reach out to the number on the card and say, thanks for the note, but there was a problem with my order. Do you mind fixing it? And you almost feel guilty for like it not going smoothly. So great way to control the outcome. I guess to make the commercial case, because that's the emotive, the psychological case, but the people that want to hear like, okay, what does that mean for LTV? The hard numbers. What's the commercial case for improving that customer experience? What impact can people expect to see on customer lifetime value, for example?
Totally, yeah. And this is super important too, because we have a lot of data to back up the different ROI and different lift that you have as well. It's funny, I geek out over the science and psychology and kind of the emotional side, because emotions are the most important and like most intelligent thing we do as people, as humans. You can't teach a computer yet to have emotions. So I geek out over that. But in terms of like actual hard ROI, so some of those examples that I gave are actually examples that we work with brands all the time and kind of set up those types of flows and customer journeys. If you think about it though, like let's think conceptually about the experience of going to like your actual mailbox. 2 decades ago, it was flipped, right? Our mailboxes were exploding with lots of communication, and we had very few email or digital communication. Now that's completely flipped. So now people receive about 120 emails on average into their inbox every day. We're subject to about 5,000 digital ads on a daily basis, and we have push notifications on every device that we own. So, your computer, tablets, your watch, for God's sake. So we're very inundated digitally. So just conceptually, now, if you think about it, if you send someone a piece of correspondence that actually shows up in their mailbox, first thing that you need to remember is that there's not a lot of competition there. People don't get a lot of mail. Their mailboxes are not exploding. So that's number one. Number two, the USPS put out a survey and study and actually found that on average, people check their mailbox every day. And when they do, they spend on average 30 minutes going through their mail, which is crazy to me. Like, that's a lot of time to be focused on actually going through something. If you can get somebody to spend 30 minutes on your website, like, that's crazy. Like, if you get somebody to spend 3 minutes on your website, that's considered, you're hitting it out of the park. So 30 minutes is like crazy. So anyway, so those are just kind of like setting the picture that, like, a lot of times people forget. So that's what one keep in mind, number one. In general, what we see, so we compare ourselves to a couple different forms of communication. We generally compare ourselves to email, and then we also compare ourselves to traditional direct mail. So like the printed mass mail that you normally get. Typically, when you compare us to email, our handwritten notes generally perform about 20 times better in terms of response rates than sending an email. So, depending on where you're sending and what your goal is, imagine if you could 20x your response rates. So that's kind of number one. And then when we talk about direct mail, so just comparing sending an actual handwritten note versus sending a piece of like mass direct mail, we perform about 10 times better. And the reason for that, there's actually a couple reasons. So number one, the whole kind of emotional side, and with a handwritten note, nobody tends to throw a handwritten note out. So you're going to get at least the impression, and someone's going to open up a handwritten note that's in an envelope. The oft-quoted stat is about 20% of direct mail gets thrown away immediately without even being looked at or opened. So there's a reason why it's called junk mail. Most people literally go through their mail over the trash bin and just can't throw it away fast enough. So already, I always say it's a little bit unfair even to compare ourselves against direct mail, because 20% of your budget just gets thrown away. It's 20% of the time it just goes in the trash without people seeing it. But with a handwritten note, that doesn't happen. We like to say we have a 99% open rate. So as long as you get the address right, someone's at least going to open and see and read what you sent, which is not the case with direct mail. So, at base, we generally perform about 10 times better than direct mail.
Yeah, that's fascinating. There are so many different types of direct mail as well. Like you say, if you're lumping physical mail into one category. I was speaking to a friend at a mastermind the other day, and he's in the agency space, and so they're like trying to, win clients for different services that they provide as a digital agency. And he was saying when they do lumpy mail or like direct mail outreach, they'll write the name and address in like a Sharpie, and then they'll put like a themed stamp of some kind on it. So it's like an Easter stamp, or like because you wouldn't assume that would be a piece of promotional material. Now, if you then open it up and it's handwritten, that's just the cherry on top, isn't it? That's the perfect scenario. So I think that's a great way of cutting through the noise in direct mail and potentially, getting past the gatekeeper that's just going to put them straight in the recycling.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, those are some, really specific stats about how we compare to some of the digital communication and direct mail. Again, it all comes down to that kind of customer journey as well, and kind of figuring out where the right point to insert our services are. The biggest mistake, honestly, that we spend a lot of time working with brands is every time we work with a brand, everybody wants to focus entirely on acquisition, and people spend almost no time focused on retention. And I really say the best use of our tool is actually as a retention tool. And that's actually how you build a really big brand. Yes, acquisition is important, but the mistake I see is that brands put like 100% of their effort into just how do I acquire more and more customers, but then they put zero effort into retaining the customers that they have, right? Remember, it's always easier to keep a customer that you have and sell more to them than it is to go out and acquire new folks. And so in terms of, LTV, and you're asking about ROI, a huge use case of what people use our handwritten notes for is later in the customer journey to either upsell or sell new products to existing customers, or for folks that offer subscriptions of any sort to keep them in subscriptions longer, right? Remember, and this is backed by, I think, a Harvard business study. If you can increase if you're a subscription business and you can increase your retention rate by just 5%, you can actually increase your revenue by up to 95%. So a lot of times people are focused on the wrong area. And instead of focusing on acquisition, we kind of like try to redirect them and say, well, listen, if we just have a small lift, like a 5% lift is not insurmountable, it's not crazy, but you can see a huge lift in your revenue if you're able to achieve it. So that's been one of the biggest things that we've done is, we talk about that customer journey and peak end theory. If somebody cancels from your subscription, what does that sound like? That sounds like the end of a journey. So we say, okay, that is a great place to focus. Let's figure out what your average lifetime value is and how long folks are typically in a subscription and preempt them from canceling. And so that's one of the biggest use cases we see with our cards as well is if someone's in your subscription for 6 months and then normally cancels, we see automation set up so that you reach out at month 5 and say, hey, thanks so much for being an awesome part of our community. Here's, 10% off your next 3 months of your subscription. And you immediately jump them over their cancellation point. Your customer lifetime value goes up. All kinds of good things happen. So retention is also a big part of it as well. Speaking about ROI and lift and how brands can really have the impact.
That's definitely the forgotten part of the picture, I think, for a lot of e-commerce brands. And to bring this to life in the context of the model that we teach, the home turf advantage model, where it's high ticket product, it is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that your business revolves just around acquisition and that it is just an acquisition game. But think about things on the back end that once you have that customer relationship, even if they've just bought something small from you, all customers are effectively then at that point paying customers. You have their address, reaching out to them for some kind of, like you said, having like a subscription service on the back end, or potentially having some kind of digital product, or whether it's like an accessory item that they might need and may need several of. Like there are so many ways to monetize that relationship. And like you put it as well, that the amount of revenue you need at that point is actually much lower because all of it's effectively profit because you've already paid the acquisition fee when they came in the door.
They're already the customer. Yeah.
That's it. It's great. And I mean, for businesses that like this idea, so say we're an e-commerce business, we've just kind of set up, we've got our sales coming through consistently now. The idea of sending out personalized notes does seem a little bit daunting because I'm probably wearing all the hats at this stage of my business. I'm the marketing guy, I'm the sales guy, I'm the customer support person. Can you share how IgnitePOST streamlines that process? How does it make it feasible for businesses like ours or of any size to enhance those customer relationships?
Yeah, totally. Great question. And yes, this is the entire reason why we started the business, because as a business owner, you have 1,000 things that are probably more important than sitting down and writing out handwritten notes every day, because it is time consuming. And so, yes, while it is valuable in terms of like where you can spend your time, there are other more valuable things that you should be spending your time doing. So that's exactly the mentality that we had when we started IgnitePOST. So to use IgnitePOST, we do a couple of things. I'll kind of talk through the whole thing, but on the back end, we actually use robots that use real Bic ballpoint pens and will write out handwritten notes in an actual handwriting style. So it's not a font that we use, it's an actual handwriting style, someone's real handwriting that we've duplicated. By the way, if we want to duplicate your own handwriting, that's an option too. So we have folks that actually put their own handwriting on file with us and can send notes in their own handwriting style. So
you wouldn't want mine on file.
I hear that a lot. A lot of people are like, absolutely not. I need to use one of yours because nobody can read what I write. So we use robotics for scale. So that gives us the scale that we need to fulfill the order. So in our fulfillment center, we use robotics. We do all the writing, shipping, packing, and sending and mailing for you. So that's that part off of your plate. But then everything that we talked about is about sending. It's a couple things. It's about sending the right thing at the right time via a very personalized medium. So that combination, that kind of trifecta, is what gets you the results. And so what we've done is we've taken the ability to send those handwritten notes, but we've given you the ability to kind of use us like a typical marketing automation tool. So earlier in this podcast, I mentioned, we are designed to really work alongside of your existing marketing automation tools. So you can drop us in Klaviyo or in Shopify alongside of a flow that you already have set up. So you can work us in alongside of things like email touch points, SMS touch points. You can then drop in a handwritten note touch point. And so the whole idea is to craft that customer journey and to craft flow that feels natural and is an omni-channel flow. And so to answer your question about, businesses that this might seem daunting to, the solution is specifically designed so that it's not daunting. So You work right within the tools that you already use. You don't have to use something different. We're integrated with Shopify. We have a Shopify app. We're integrated with Klaviyo. You can literally drop us right into your existing Klaviyo flows. So it's designed to be very seamlessly integrated and fit in with the things you already have. And for the owner of a brand, you use our product exactly like you would use any other marketing automation tool. I always say, if you can set up and configure an email to be sent when you want it sent, then you can also configure a handwritten note to be sent when you want it to be sent. So it's literally that easy. So we kind of take away a lot of those pain points that people are used to, and then we provide the scale on the back end with robotics and with our own fulfillment center.
It's a great setup. And I guess you can use so as an end user, if I'm going to be setting this up, I go into Klaviyo just like I would add a new email into one of our flows, except this time it's the integration with IgnitePOST, for example. And then I would type something like, hi, insert dynamic field for contact's first name. Thanks so much for purchasing from our store. We're delighted. We'd love to hear from how you felt the experience was. Please leave us some feedback, something like that. Thanks, business owner Lewis. And then that kind of whole process then just gets automatically sent out. I never have to do it again, and it just happens on repeat.
Exactly. That's exactly how it works. And in reality, that part that you just talked about is the easy part. That takes about 5 minutes. The more difficult part is always figuring out, when do I want to insert this? What do I want to say? And so the approach we take is kind of trifold. It's education, onboarding, and then automation management. So every brand that we work with goes through a full onboarding with us. So you will come on board. We will help you get set up. And so we educate you and we share best practices based on what we know in the other brands we work with. So you can learn faster, and you can kind of learn based on all of the customers that we work with, not just you in a silo. So we give you some education. We do an onboarding with you. So if you have flows set up, or depending on what tools you're using, we integrate with a lot of different CRM systems and marketing automation tools. We set all that up for you. And then ongoing, we continue to serve that automation. We continue to give you best practices, and our team is available to also do a little bit of that education. We blog a lot. We got a very active blog. And so we're always coming out with guides and templates and best practices. And so it's kind of that trifecta. So we don't just kind of throw you over the wall and say, okay, you're off and running, we're not going to talk to you. So it's that education, onboarding, and automation that we do.
That's what brings it to life, I think. And that's what prevents business owners from getting overwhelmed, isn't it? If I have to piece everything together myself, then I know it's probably not going to happen. Or if it is, it's going to be months down the line. So for our listeners that are hearing this and thinking, okay, I feel like this would work for my business, I feel like I could certainly give this a try, see what happens, create some of those amazing bond connections with my customers. How do you suggest that people could start working with you?
Yeah. Well, so the easiest thing is just hit our website. So it's just ignitepost.com. The coolest thing is, if you're really interested, we'll have one of the robots actually write you a real handwritten note and send it to your door. So you can go to ignitepost.com and you'll see there's a button that says sample. So you can click on that, or you can just go to ignitepost.com/sample, fill in your information, give us some information about where we should send it. And then one of the robots will get that. They will write out a card and send it and mail it to your door so you can see for yourself. So that's the easiest way if you actually want to see things for yourself. But hit our site, and if you really want to get up and running and get some help plugging this into your existing marketing flows or your existing store or shop, our team is right there. There's a contact button as well. We're happy to help you out and share some case studies depending on your situation or what your brand is, what you're selling, and how we think we can be most impactful for you.
Perfect. Well, it's been an enlightening conversation. I'm really looking forward to trying this out. And thank you very much for joining us on the podcast, Arian.
Of course. This has been awesome. I've had a blast as well. So thank you so much for having me.
An incredible conversation there with Arian. It really opens up a new perspective on customer engagement. I loved what he was talking about, the psychology behind why personalized gestures like handwritten notes being sent out to customers can significantly impact customer loyalty and the growth of your business. I thought it was really a fascinating conversation.
Absolutely, Lewis. Yeah, really fascinating to have a listen to your chat there with Arian, really talking about how important it is to look after your customers and how that really makes a difference to the bottom line was fascinating. So yeah, thanks to you to have that conversation, and to Arian. I think everyone listening can take something away from that in terms of looking after your customers. How can you make it more personal, and how that will benefit your company in the long run?
Exactly. And remember, it's one thing to just listen to conversations and strategies like these, but the magic really happens when you start to actually implement them and put them into action. So to complement what Arian shared today and to act as a step-by-step guide to get your business off the ground, I highly recommend picking up a copy of the Home Turf Advantage book. I wrote it to help you implement these kinds of customer-centric strategies within a proven framework by growing your e-commerce business. And you can start reading it immediately by visiting htabook.com.
Enjoying the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment or a review, and we might just feature it on an upcoming episode. Also, for detailed show notes and resources, head to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast.
If you found value from any episode of this podcast, please take just 10 seconds to leave us a quick 5-star review on your podcast app of choice. It helps us more than you could imagine, and who knows, you might just hear your comments on the show. Thanks for being part of our community. Your support helps us keep delivering a new episode every week.
Now we're going to answer a question that's coming from a listener of the podcast. So thanks for getting your questions in. If you want your question answered on an upcoming episode, all you need to do is comment underneath the YouTube video version of an episode. And that's exactly what Mr. Vinster798 has done. He has asked, "Hello guys, loving the podcast as per, and I do have one question. With regards to domain names when starting a dropshipping business, what would work better? A general name that would allow you to sell multiple different categories in the future, or a more niche domain name?"
Yeah, thanks for your question, Mr. Vinster. So it's a great question for anyone starting an e-commerce business and wondering what to call it, because I know at some point that question will be on the front of your mind. So we'd recommend that you find a balance. We typically choose a trading name for our business that's a balance between our niche, but also without restricting us to selling a broader range of products in the wider niche that we're in later on, because that's one of the best ways you can expand at a certain point. I believe personally that it's important that my brand name is related to the niche market that I'm selling in some way, just so that my customers know that we're an authority in that niche, in that industry, and that when they land on our store, they feel at home. They feel like, okay, I'm in the right place here. It makes sense. It feels like the specialist for these types of products that I've landed on. Now, if we're too specifically focused on one product, what happens is later on, we restrict ourselves from being able to sell other products that are in that same niche, but maybe a level wider. So for example, if I entered the skiing niche and said, right, I'm going to go into skiing as a niche, I probably wouldn't call my store Skiing Paradise, because if I later wanted to broaden my product range to other winter equipment, customers may not resonate with my brand name if I'm called Skiing Paradise, right? They may still buy, but it might just hurt my conversion rate slightly. They might think, oh, I'm not actually here for skiing. I'm here for something at snowboarding, for example. I don't know if it's, the right store. And so it won't prevent you from being able to sell other types of products. But at this point, when you haven't yet started making sales, why limit yourself when you don't need to? Instead, if I were to go to a higher level of niche and call my brand name something like Winter Gear Central, an all-encompassing name, what happens is I immediately communicate our specialty in winter sports equipment, but I do so without limiting myself strictly to skiing. Okay, so this way that I'd position myself still as an authority in the broader niche of winter sports, and it gives me the flexibility later on still to expand the product lines that I'm selling within that winter sports niche without being limited to just selling skiing equipment. It's kind of like if you set off on a long drive, you've got your destination in mind, you know where you're going, but along the way you might hit traffic jams, there might be road closures, things like that. We want to be able to adapt along the way and take different routes. We don't want to tie ourselves to, you have to travel to the destination with this road only and there's no other option. You know how the sat-nav sometimes diverts you around different roads depending on the traffic conditions. And so in this case, it's depending on the market conditions, you want to be able to adapt along your journey and potentially expand the products that you offer on your store. So hopefully, Mr. Vinster798, that helps. And perhaps you can aim for a name that offers you room to grow within your chosen niche and ensures that your brand can evolve along the way.
Completely agree, Lewis. Yeah, great question and something really important to discuss there. So now we'll highlight a listener review that we've had for the podcast as well. and I love doing this. So a big thank you to Veda Busmate 5894. I hope I've got the pronunciation right there. But they've said the lack of confidence in ability holds you back to success. And that's so true and such a nice story to hear.
Thank you so much for your review. I'm really glad to hear that you've been enjoying the podcast. Now, do you want to join our Elite Masterclass program and community for free? If so, to be in with a chance to win free access, simply leave us a review for the podcast on whichever podcast platform you're listening to us on right now. Check out episode 52 of the podcast for full details to enter that competition.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you're walking away with insights and inspiration.
To kickstart your e-commerce journey, grab a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, at htabook.com. It's a distilled guide based on real experience to help you build your e-commerce venture.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more strategies and success stories. And if you like what you heard, a 5-star review would mean the world to us, and you might just get a shout out on an upcoming episode.
And finally, thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We can't wait to bring you more insights on the next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.